Hello, everybody, and welcome to 1 Billion Arcs After Hours, or Let's Talk Stories After Hours. Going forward, we're just gonna call it Let After Hours. Is what we're gonna learn how to talk. Is the first thing we're gonna do, and then we're gonna call it After Hours. But yes, this is the podcast where small, short, uh, bite-sizable, I guess, stuff where we talk about the stuff that we didn't have a chance to talk about, or I talk about the stuff that we didn't have a chance to talk about on the bigger episode, as well as sometimes other stories that I just think tie into what we were ultimately talking about as well. And then the other thing is I answer questions that you have to ask, or questions I find on the internet that I feel like might be relevant to you. So I think it's going to be fun. I hope it's going to be fun. Please forgive me. I just woke up, so I'm not a human, but I am here nonetheless to talk to you guys. We did on this last episode that you have heard, we talked about The Warriors, the concept album, not the movie, not the book. The concept album by Lin-Manuel Miranda is his name, Mr. Hamilton himself. We talked about that. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that today. We're talking about representation. But before we jump into all of that, we're going to talk about I'm going to do the obligatory social stuff. I'm going to do that twice, just so you're aware. It's going to happen twice in this episode, so there's no bullshit here between us. There's no bullshit in this space. I'm going to shamelessly plug some things, and you're going to listen if you want to. But social media, we are on Instagram, Blue Sky, TikTok, if it's still here by the time you hear this, and which it should be, because you guys will hear this coming up soon, but if it's still around, then great. But if not, whatever. At 1 Brilliant Arc. That is the handle for pretty much all of our socials. That's YouTube, Instagram, Blue Sky, TikTok. 1 Brilliant Arc. So check us out, follow us, subscribe to us, like us, whatever the connecting mechanism is. Do the things. We appreciate you. Thank you so much. And then, of course, our Substack. If you were listening to this, you most likely are listening to it from the Substack. So you've already done the things, and I truly, truly do appreciate you. Thank you. But if you haven't and you find this somewhere else, like on Spotify, go on over to www.obaconnect.com. That's OBACONNECT.com. I think that's how you spell it. If it is not, I'm the worst writer ever, and don't listen to me. But I think that is how you spell it. So ObaConnect, I'm pretty sure that's how you spell it.com. Sign up for our newsletter where we do on a weekly basis break down pop culture mediums to breaking down story mechanics and making them easier for you, as well as teaching you how to be a more confident, competent writer both on and off the page. So yeah, check those things out. Now, I'm going to jump right into the topic that I wanted to talk about. First of all, representation. As I said, scary word for a lot of people. A lot of people don't like it. A lot of people don't like making sure other people are represented, which is a weird thing in 2025 to not want other people to be represented. But hey, whatever floats your boat, I hope it sinks. Anyway, that being said, representation is incredibly important. For me, I am a big fan of Superman. Always have been, always will be. You cannot make me hate that man. Never. Anyway, that being said, when I was a kid, I used to be that one that ran around with the sheet around their neck, the towel around their neck, whatever I could find, and I would jump off things, and I would, grab my pillow and throw it across the room like it was a bank robber, and engineer these life-threatening, high-stakes moments that I could save my cat from, because I was like a little psycho apparently, but just those kinds of moments. That's what I was doing, but I loved that. And my old man, my dad, I'm not going to say exactly what he said because it triggers me, and I'm not going to have a whole anxiety-induced panic attack on this podcast. But I'll paraphrase. One of the things that he did say was that basically little boys that look like me will never be superheroes. And keep in mind, as far as when you're 5-6 years old, you've seen black firefighters and police officers and stuff like that, but they don't lift cars up and save people in that way. So it isn't until you're older that you realize that that's probably the closest you're going to get to what a superhero might be. So for me, it was like, oh yeah, he's right. I've never seen anybody that looks like me on screen. So, they don't exist. And it really kind of fucked with me. But as I got older and I got into other spaces like writing, publishing, and filmmaking, I started to notice that a lot of these big name people, like the Stephen Kings, the Neil Gaimans, the J.K. Rowlings, regardless of what you think of her, all of these people, they were all white. In the directing game, yeah, you had Spike Lee, you had, and this was before Barry Jenkins and Ryan Coogler and all of them were prominent figures in the space. So it was just like these things that I love. People that look like me don't do them, and then of course characters themselves. It was very rare growing up that you saw the black action star was like Will Smith, and he plays the same freaking character in every movie, so that doesn't really count. But like, you barely ever got to see anybody that looked like you, and that was challenging. But like I said, character wise, sucked on its own. But outside of character, it was the people that were making it, the content creators that weren't black, that didn't look like me. And that made me feel like I could never, as much as I love to create, as much as I like to make things, I don't think I'll ever be in the spaces or be the prolific or iconic voice, because no one like me has ever done it. I haven't seen any faces that do it, or not many. What makes me think that, and I think that as human beings, we have a tendency to naturally assume that if other people haven't done it, or not a lot of other people have done it, that there's no way that we will be successful at doing it. It's a weird thing that we think, but it is. And that's not everybody, because there are some trailblazers in the world who have the ability to just kind of say, no one has walked down that path before me, but I want to go down it, so I'm going to go and do it. And they make a name for themselves, and that's great. But that's not the average. The average person that's watching this, it may be you. You may be a trailblazer. Get out there and do it. But the average person, I'm willing to guess, is like me, and maybe watching this or maybe listening to this and feels the same way I do, that we don't want to move forward. We want to move forward, but we can't move forward a lot of the times because we keep thinking, what are the odds that me, I'm the guy who, stands in his kitchen and eats cold pizza at 3 o'clock in the morning and, trying to be quiet about it because you don't want everyone else in the house to know that you're eating the cold pizza, will trip over the couch and knock everything down in the darkness. I'm that guy. I'm the guy who has trouble walking and talking at the same time. How the hell am I going to be the one to break through the wall and be a prolific, iconic voice in my space? That's just not going to happen. And so the thought process of that being a possibility doesn't even enter your mind. And this makes me think why it is so important for people to tell stories, because I think that if you feel that way, if you feel like I feel, there are other people out there who feel exactly like you. I can guarantee it. Because if you feel like I feel, we've already found each other. I see you and you see me. In that sense, that must mean there are other people out there that might feel like us too. And that is why representation is important. Because representation ultimately helps other people see that I can do it, that it's possible. It is possible. And you may not be the prolific, iconic author that gets their name, that is the household name. That may never happen, but you can be. You can be that for someone. You can definitely be that for someone, and that is why you should write your stories. The Warriors Concept album talks about it as gender swap. It put characters in a position that we were normally used to seeing for men. And imagine, when I think about it, is if there were young women that were reading this or whatever, that were doubting themselves, feeling like, I can't be in this space because it's not meant for me, can get inspired by something like this concept album. Or a film where the main character looks like you. Or if it's not a character, it's the person who made it that inspires you to move forward. This is why if you are an underrepresented group, a member of an unrepresented group, whether that be the LGBTQIA plus community, whether you are a person of color, whether you are a woman, whether you're trans, whether you are whatever you are, however you identify, however you are seen, however you want to be seen, have a story worth telling, and it is absolutely your responsibility to tell it. If you want to tell the story. There are some people who have no interest in being storytellers, and in that case, I challenge you to realize that you're a storyteller regardless. Professionally. There are very few people, there's some people who don't want to be professional storytellers, and in that case, we're not talking to you right now. But for those that do, if you're listening to this podcast, if you follow our newsletter, I take it you want to be a professional storyteller in some way, shape, or form. If you fall under an unrepresented group of some kind, it is your social responsibility to tell your story and to tell your story authentically. Don't conform for somebody else's idea of what your story should be. Don't take, if you're trans and you want to write a character that represents you, that you can see yourself in, not necessarily a self-insert character, but just someone that you can resonate with, don't turn them into a man or a woman or anything that you feel is going to be accepted or easily or much easier to digest. Tell the fucking truth. Tell the truth. Tell your truth. And I know how easy it is to try to become to try to be malleable, to try to be whatever society needs you to be so that you can get on. You know, you think I'll just tell this mainstream story first, get on, and then I'll hit them in the face with my authentic shit later when I make it. And that's a narrative that has been pumped throughout the Black community for a very long time of be what they can digest first, and then when they let you in, then you can be who you want to be. And I can almost guarantee you that's a lie. I can almost guarantee it's a lie. If you conform to the ideas of mainstream to get in, that is what you will be held to for the rest of your career. I promise you. Because because everyone's going to be like, oh, you're not being real. You're not being authentic. Be yourself. Show up the way you are, and the right people will love you. That's honestly, I came on this podcast and I wanted to be this very button-up pundit, CNN type of master storyteller talker or whatever. And just sort of talk to you guys and be professional or whatever. And I realized that's not me. I'm a founder of a company, but I'm a fucking goofball. That's who I am. I'm an African American man who struggles with his own identity, and I think that it's important that I show up to every space that I'm in as authentic as I possibly can. And I want that because I know that the right people will love me. And they will love what I am doing, and they will love what I have to say. And that's the same thing goes for your work. Show up as authentically as possible. Show up like a weirdo. Show up like the strong, powerful minority member that you are, and fucking show out. Because you need to. And it's not just about you, it's about the people that see you doing it. Because the people that see you doing it will learn. You never know. You showing up as the authentic you may spark the next iconic voice in your space from some underrepresented group. Even if it's not you, you may spark that creation. You may be the inspiration that they have. And when they do get on, then they mention, I was inspired by X, Y, and Z. And that's how you become. Side note, there are so many people that in my experience, I had no idea who they were until I found the more iconic version, the iconic voice that pointed out I was inspired by this lesser known person. And then I just became obsessed with the lesser known person. That happens too. The end point that I want to make here is that at the end of the day, representation is important because it helps other people not only be seen, but it also teaches other people how to approach and interact with your world. And you expand other people's worldview, and that I am always all for. So without further ado, I'm going to move on from this topic, but I did want to just say that overall. We're going to move on to the question. Now, this question is a question that was asked of us. I'm not going to say the name only because I didn't do a disclaimer yet of letting people know that if you do ask me a question, I'm typically going to use your username or your actual name or whatever. unless you expressly ask me not to. So that disclaimer is out there now, but because it wasn't before, I don't know if this person wants their name out there or want anyone to know that they were asking the question. So that's just how that's going to go. But okay, so what is the most challenging step for an author to go from amateur to expert? I think that's a great question. I think the key to this is, and it's going to sound like a cop-out answer, but it's the truth. The key to going from amateur to expert is to accept the fact that you will never be an expert. You will never be a master of anything. Master to me, and this is just my opinion, but a master to me is a person who has nothing else to learn or very little to learn. They have mastered the entire art form. And in that sense, once you become a master, there's nothing else for you to really know. You can't be a master until then. So to become an expert at something, you have nothing else to really know. What I would say is I would replace the word expert with professional. And in that sense, what is the most challenging step for an author to go from amateur to professional? Many people will tell you you have to get paid for your writing to be a professional. I will say fuck all that noise, and that's a lie. To be a professional, you need two things. You need to have self-discipline, which means you need to show up regardless of how you feel. And then you also need to keep resilience. They always say learn how to say no, but you also have to learn how to take a no. Right? So being able to be told no, being able to work on a short story or a novel and have nobody buy it and still come back and write another, to be able to write short stories and put them on Wattpad or whatever on Medium or your Substack and have nobody subscribe, nobody read it, and nobody whatever, and still write some more and keep releasing them. That's resilience. That's consistency. That's self-discipline, and that pays off, and that's what makes you a professional. That's what it does. It doesn't matter how strong the grasp of craft you have, because that comes with practice, that comes with study, and that comes with consistency. So those things happen no matter what. And you can be an amateur and do all of that. You can be an amateur and be great at the craft. But if you don't show up at the page every day, if you don't put in the work and keep showing up even when everybody is telling you, no, this isn't for you, and keep trying. If you don't do that, if you don't show up and create in the face of indifference, which is the hardest thing you can do, because it's easier to show up. Obviously, it's easier to show up if everybody loves you. It's a little bit harder, but it's still possible to show up even if everybody hates you. It's almost impossible to show up when everyone's indifferent, when nobody cares about what you're writing, when nobody shows up at all. Because I'd rather have a whole audience. I would prefer to have an audience where everybody's here cheering for me. I'd be okay if everybody showed up and booed me. At least you showed up. But if nobody even comes, that's oh boy, that's hard. And so showing up and doing it again, showing up the next night, even though nobody showed up at the show before, writing the next story, even though nobody bought it or nobody read it or nobody commented, nobody shared, nobody thought anything of it, nobody gave it second thought. That's resilience, because eventually they will. Eventually they'll show up. You just got to keep going. And that's what makes you a professional. So my suggestion to you, if you are wondering if you're a professional, ask yourself the question, do I show up would I show up and do this even if nobody showed up to support me or hate me or anything? Would I show up anyway? And will I keep going? Even when I don't feel like it, when I wake up on a Monday morning or a Sunday morning and it's my weekend and I worked all week and I just don't feel like doing anything, I just want to watch some movies all day, do I open up my laptop or get on my desktop and do I start writing like I'm supposed to? Do I get my word count in? That's a professional. So the most challenging thing I think for any author to go through is being able to master those qualities. If you can master those qualities, you can do anything. Okay. That being said, I am ready to check up out of here. Overall, the recap of the episode. If you're too long, didn't listen, well, too late. You're at the end, so you already listened. But ultimately, just make sure representation is everything. It is everything. And if you have a story to tell, you're an underrepresented person, get out there and share that story because people need to hear it. And then if you are trying to break out and become a professional writer of some kind, keep showing up. Be resilient when everything tells you not to be. Please. do it. That being said, here is the pitch. Just so you guys know, if you are struggling with a story of your own, if you are struggling with if you feel like, oh, my story is good, but it can be better, or I just can't quite crack the code, or you've already written it and you need some editing and you need that kind of thing, do our free consultation. You can find the link to scheduling a free consultation down below or to the left. No, it's not left. To the whichever way the left is, you can find it somewhere. You can find it below us in the actual recording or in the podcast description, as well as in our newsletter. If you follow our newsletter, it's pretty much in every single newsletter. We have a link. Definitely do the free consult. I think it'll be beneficial to you, even if it's just to get a vibe check for your story, make sure that you're on the right track and see where you need to go next. Maybe you just don't know where you need to go next. We don't mind having that conversation with you. So definitely do that. Other than that, if you have questions, if you want to ask a question and you want me to answer it for you, just email me directly, jared@obaconnect.com. Again, that's Jared, Jared, @obaconnect.com. I'm more than willing to hear your thoughts, your advice, your suggestions, or your questions. Or you can just shoot us a DM on our newsletter at Substack or any of our social media platforms. And if we see it, we will definitely answer your question. Keep in mind, I will use your name unless you expressly ask me not to. All that to be said, thank you, and listen to the next episode of Let's Talk Stories, where we discuss the